we're going to stick with the United States, and the next question comes from Ansar Iqbal Sahib. He again extends a very warm assalamu alaikum to the panel. His question is about, we mentioned Satan earlier, his question is one covering the concept of Satan in Islam. And what Ansar Sahib wants to know is, I would like to know whether Satan is a metaphorical way of referring to evil desires that man feels, or is an actual being in existence. And he's compared it to the example of angels. Dr. Saab, if I could start with you first of all. Satan, does he exist?
Well, he certainly does exist, because we find many references to this subject, both in the Holy Quran and from the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. He has talked about this. But in a general sense, we also can say that he does exist in a metaphorical sense, that it is an aura, a perception, or it is an influence or an agent which is out there, and he has tries to exert some influence or some power over you. So this is a subject which sometimes is difficult to comprehend and to understand in that respect. But what we do know is that God has appointed, per se, two spiritual callers. One is the Holy Spirit, and one is the Satan and the Iblis. They only call, and they have no compulsion in that respect. So man has got these influences, a good influence which is from the Holy Spirit, and an evil influence from the Satan and Iblis. And it is how he comes out of this test. This is the whole perception of life that we go through, is that we have these attractions, influences over us, and how do we pass our journey using the Holy Quran and our faith in trying to come victorious over these influences. It is also, said that every person has a Satan in himself. The Holy Prophet ﷺ has in fact said that it runs in your blood. And when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, O Prophet of Allah, do you have a Satan inside you? He said, yes, I have a Satan inside me, but he has submitted. He has become a Muslim, in that he has tried his best, obviously, to exert his influence, but because of the pristine beauty and nature of the Prophet ﷺ's life, that influence was now had been extinguished to that degree, so that there was no influence that he was able to influence over the Prophet ﷺ. So this is what man has running through his body, is an aura. And depending on how you tackle that and how you are able to resist that and go towards the caller of good, the Holy Spirit, then that is what the journey is, and that is how Allah judges us, and this is a test and a trial that Allah has put us through.
So it's good over evil, and in the case of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, we saw how that actually is epitomized in the supreme person, or whoever walked this earth. But coming back to, we see a lot of pictorial representations of what Satan may be, specifically, across the screens constantly. There's this concept of Satan actually being someone who appears with a long tail and horns and what have you. Well, is that just conceptually, is it just a figment of people's imaginations?
Well, it's a lot of exaggeration going on there, but I think that often I think maybe these questions are motivated by fear, and that people are hoping that Satan is not a person in reality, because then they might bump into him, mightn't they, if they leave their homes someday, and so it might not be good. So
well,
they ask,
as I described him, they may notice who he is.
Yes, they might notice, of course, if he has horns and a tail and all that. So, although there are other things with horns and tails, but still. But what I wanted to say was that even if there is an evil spirit, and we know there is, as Dr. Saab said, there is a concept of an evil spirit who, incites to evil, and a good spirit who incites to good, even then, we don't deal with them, do we? We don't deal with angels on a daily basis, on an individual basis, as I'm dealing with this angel now. No, we deal with the people who are being influenced either by the angels or by Satan, or by being influenced by both at different times. We deal with human beings, which brings me to the question of possession.
Yes.
Because as we know, that we could say that actually the greater part of humanity today believes in possession. And that's quite scary when you think of it. I mean, the rationality or supposed rationality of the 21st century.
So when you say possession, like possessed by the
Possessed
devil?
by a demon or something
devil,
like that.
Right, okay.
We know, for example, that the greatest number of Christians belongs to the Catholic Church, or we hope that it's perhaps still the case, and our figures are not incorrect. Whatever the case, the Catholics do believe that possession is a fact, and that people can be occupied bodily by certain demons. And we have a parallel belief to that, which is very similar, except the wording is slightly different, that the terminology is different, but by Muslims. Among Muslims, where most Muslims today believe that possession by the jinn is possible.
Yes.
And therefore you'll have the whole paraphernalia of the exorcists within the Catholic Church and within Islam in different sects actually, who will be there, to get the jinns or the demons out of the people according to the case. We know, of course, that all that is not, it has absolutely no basis in reality, and that a lot of the possessions are actually just, motivated by the results of psychotic disorders or something like this, or psychiatric disorders. And in Islam, luckily, we do not find any scriptural basis for any such belief at all. In Christianity, on the other hand, they have a bit of a how would I say, hurdle to overcome, because they do have scriptural basis for it. We find, for example, the incident where Jesus himself removes evil spirits from a person who was possessed by not one but several, and transfers them into a herd of swine, who then, jump over a cliff and into the sea, etc. And so they're very real, apparently, in the New Testament. So there is a basis for that there. But otherwise, we do not deal with Satan as a person, or angels as persons, or as beings as such. We deal with people who are influenced by either one or the other.
So we're Dr. Zaid, I mean, that's an important point. Yes, in Christianity, if there's a basis. But in Islam, I mean, we see cases of, misguided obviously, but of, sticks being used to beat out the satanic influences on sometimes a child as well. I mean, these practices, where do they originate from, or where are they coming from?
Well, as we know, certain practices have come into Islam from within different cultures and from different societies. We find this in Africa, we find this in Asia. Voodoo and black magic has taken root because of this perception that somebody has become possessed by the devil.
Of course,
and that we see these, you go to African villages, we see these sort of things, exorcisms carried out. And Islam, obviously, when Islam entered Africa and Asia, then there were these practices rife at the moment, and then slowly they have become part of what person perceive as Islam. And that is the function of why the promised Messiah alayhi salam came, to root out these practices which had nothing to do with Islam in the first instance, and that is what we see. But certainly, even in this day and age, in the body of Islam, we see that these practices are carried out, and this is their perception, that until this is carried out, the exorcism carried out, and sometimes very horrendous things are done to that person, as far as putting them to death even, that they do not get rid of that. So this is totally contrary to the teachings of Islam, to the practice of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. We see no example of that. We see no example of that during the life of the Khulafa. But this was what has slowly crept into Islam in that respect.
Gentlemen, Jazakumullah, and Ansar Sahib, I trust your question on the devil has been answered. Any other